Hello and welcome to Six Figure Authors, the show that helps you take your writing career to the next level. I'm Lindsay Baroker and I'm here with one co-host this week.
I'm Joe Lalo.
Andrea is getting her house ready to sell, so she's got a little too busy, can't join us. But we are going to be answering some of the questions from the Six Figure Authors Facebook group today on topics ranging from going wide with audiobooks, reader magnets, improving box set sales, whether you can or should have a perma-free book one if the rest of your series is exclusive, and we will just kind of see how many more we get through beyond that. Before that, Joe, do you have any news that you would like to share?
Not a whole lot of news. I finished the rough draft of the Greaterland Saga 2, which is the second book of my new epic fantasy. I got the cover back for the first one, which is now called The Bygone Dagger. So I officially have a title for it. It's always the last thing I come up with. Um, I've had no releases since the end of last year, so I'm eager to set a release date, but I'm toying with the idea of holding on to it until I can get a pre-order up on the second one. We'll see if my willpower holds out. I have other books I could release, but they don't have covers yet because of a previously mentioned difficulty in finding an artist that matches the style of the appropriate cover. So it's going to be a crazy second half of the year for me. I'm going to have between 4 and 6 releases in the second half of the year, but the first half has been literally crickets, just silence. So, yeah, that's about it. Just steadily moving toward what is hopefully my first release of the year.
That is rough. I had the last one in February before I just released the first epic fantasy and another side project. And it's like, ooh, that money starts to go downhill, especially like later in a series. I'm not usually making as much as like when I did the rapid release of a new series with 3 books, bang, 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 like last year. Those are some good months. And then they get a little leaner, like the new releases help. But later in the series, it's only, the diehard fans who are like, oh, book 9, it's like, yay. But yeah, January wasn't too bad. I was lucky enough to get like one of the Kindle daily deals or something, or I think it was Prime Reading actually, because it was something where it was like a really good month. You never know. Amazon sends out those letters and like, oh, would you like to select your book to maybe be in a deal? You never know if it's going to be like lame or like not really noticeable or something good. Usually if they actually pay you, I think they do for the Prime Reading, most of the time they offer you some money. Those are the better ones rather than just like, hey, would you maybe want your book to be on sale in India on this random day in May? Uh, that's hard waiting for covers though. I'm the same way with titles. I'm envious of people who know them well ahead because then you can order the cover art. That's usually the thing. Like I can give them the description, the plot, but yeah, it's kind of hard until you have the title finalized. When are you releasing book one now that you have the title or the cover and title?
Um, I I I have it all edited and everything. I could set a release date immediately. My book 2 gets its edit starts on June 1st. So I was thinking of I'm going to announce a release date by June 1st. I don't know if I'm going to release on June 1st, but yeah. So within 2 months it'll be out. The sooner the better. We'll see.
So you will have book two pretty much ready. You could rapid release if you wanted to.
I
I don't know if
could.
you want to for
I don't
yours
have.
aren't that
I won't
long
have book
though.
3 ready, but yeah, mine.
Yeah.
My yeah. For Epic, these are pretty darn short. These are. It's weird. I was like, let me go back to Epic, and then just couldn't get the length up. Meanwhile, I'm coming down off of something that's supposed to be 90,000 words, and I gave it 130. So I'm just all over the place.
Yeah, that was sort of my problem. I ended up writing something different after book one, just because book one was 150 some thousand words, so not the longest thing I've ever written, but I needed a break and something simpler. And then so now I finished up book two and sent that to my beta readers, and it's like 190,000 words right now, and I'm going to like have to add a couple little scenes, so it'll be fun. I proof listened to the audiobook of book one myself because I usually farm that out and pay someone like $20 an hour, to do it. But I just wanted to get it out there as quickly as possible, which actually Audible approved it really quickly. I was surprised because the letter now says like up to 30 business days ACX, and it went up like the next day. I was like, wow, that's never happened before. So now I got to hurry up and get the Patreon copy up because I love that BookFunnel offers it now, offers us lets us host on their thing, but it's another place I have to upload the entire audiobook. And with my rural internet, like the download is fine, but the upload's super slow. So it's just, I think it took about 4 hours to get the audiobook up the other night on ACX and Findaway. Let's see, but other news, like I said, I released my first book in the epic fantasy series. I think I talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's now like the 2 week point. And I did it at $2.99, which I usually do 99 cents because I'm usually bringing out book 2 and 3 within a couple weeks or, a couple months after that. But in this case, book 2 is coming out more than a couple months later, and book 3, I've just started working on that one, so it'll be a couple months after that. So I didn't want to do 99 cents when I wasn't going to be making any more from that series for a while. So I will say, you definitely make more obviously on each book sale at $2.99, but I definitely sold fewer books, and I usually stay higher in the rankings longer, which I don't necessarily care that much about the rankings, but it's easier to remember, like, oh, that book hung out like 150 in the whole Amazon store for 3 weeks. I'll remember that, whereas I won't remember like I was selling 300 books a day when that happened, or whatever it is. So this has dropped off quite a bit faster. I think I have quite a few KU readers at this point, but I still sell more books in general. So because I'm so wide with a lot of my backlist. So I would say, I would probably, if I do this again, I probably will go back to 99 cents for book 1 and hopefully be able to rapid release, because that's what I like to do. It's really, I was talking to Joe before this. It's been pretty effective for me in the past, and so I'm a fan of it. But these longer books, I just didn't have it in me to write 3 big Herkin books back to back and kind of wait on releasing the first one until I had all 3 ready. I will say, as far as blurbs go, I know people, we always wonder, like, can we do better? Can we convert better with the blurbs? I had tried kind of a different type of blurb since it was epic fantasy. I did more, and it's got a big like ensemble cast. I did more of a stand back, broader picture about what they face as a group, instead of a blurb that's more focused on sort of the main character or one of the main characters, which is not what's recommended generally. Like Libby Hawker has some good videos on YouTube that you can check out for blurb writing tips. And I think her book is called Gotta Have It. She covers that stuff too. Always recommend focusing, sort of picking a protagonist, focusing on them. But I one time with my Dragon Blood series, with my Dragon Blood box set, I did sort of it was the same type of thing where I had different heroes in different books. So I just had to kind of do a broad overview rather than focusing on one character. And that one has always converted super well. That's like my best selling. I mean, right now it's free, but it's even free, it gets a lot of downloads whether I'm doing anything or not. So I'm like, oh, I was like, well, let me try to replicate that. But it did not really convert very well on this one. I had started Amazon ads 3 or 4 days before the release, just on the pre-order. So by the time I, was released, I could see, it's always hard to tell with KU, even though they now give you page reads, it's still a little hard to tell right away. Like you can kind of look back on the last 2 weeks and see, okay, what's the equivalent? How many books were borrows and read-throughs did I get that were basically sales? But I could tell it wasn't doing that well. So I redid the blurb, made it more of a focused on the hero type blurb, and it did start converting better right away. So that is something you can try if you're, if you're running ads and you're just like, wow, I'm getting a lot of clicks, like the covers are cool, right? But I'm not getting a lot of people actually buying, not getting a lot of reads. Maybe that's a good time to try changing up the ad copy or the blurb copy. Other news in this series, I was lucky enough to pay for it, to have the option to pay for a Bookbub new release deal. I had this a couple of days ago, and this was the first one I've had of those. This is the one where they have to select you. This isn't just buy the pre-order alert or whatever. So I've only had one other one, and it was like the month or the summer that they started doing it. I think it was in 2018. And that one was on a 99-cent book 1, kind of fantasy 2, secondary world fantasy. And that one was really not worth it. They don't insist it be a 99-cent book. And I would probably say, do not do it on a 99-cent book. This was one of the few places though that they take full price new releases. And it did go better this time. But considering it costs about $450 for fantasy, it didn't break even. So, it's still kind of a question mark. Like if you get these, do you actually want to do them? But considering how few opportunities I had to advertise this on sponsorship sites, I think maybe only one of the places that will take 99 cents books was willing to do a $2.99 new release. I was happy to get it. And it did get a nice bump. That was almost 2 weeks after the release. So it didn't earn out, but it did get it did better than the previous time. So, maybe take a shot, especially if you're doing a new release, not at 99 cents. All right. Do you have any thoughts on that, Joe? Do you price your new releases lower, or like a book one? Do you do 99 cents, or do you just go like 4.99 right off the bat?
I I think I've always started off at full price. I think so. I tend to price a little bit lower with my books, so 2.99 is usually my launch price for my book one. Um, but I don't, yeah, I don't usually drop down to 99 cents. I think I will be with this new release just to give it a shot because again, I never did before. And also, I should say, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to launch this new epic fantasy as in KU or wide. I think I'm going to try it in KU again, give KU another chance now that I've, learned a little bit more. But yeah, so I'm gonna give 99 cents a try. I don't think I'm gonna do this new release thing. Like you, I did one ages ago when they first made it an option, and I might have made my money back because again I didn't launch at 99 cents, but I was unimpressed with considering everything else that Bookbub does. It just didn't, wow me.
Yeah, I would guess I ended up in the Epic Fantasy getting like maybe 80 sales at 2.99 off of that, and I'm sure some KU borrows too. But so when you look at $450, that's not a very good return. But it might have been like 100. All I can do is kind of compare what it did the day before and the day after. So hard to say for sure, but it definitely wasn't like the 200 and some you would need to break even at that price point. And yeah, you'll have to let me know how it goes if you do 99 cents. The other reason I only do that on book ones, I always release everything else at full price. And the other reason I do it is because I know I'm going to want to run a sale on that book one later on. Like I'll do 99 cents often just for the first couple weeks or maybe longer if it's still selling really well. But then I bump it up to maybe 2.99 for that first one. And that makes it easier. Later, if I run sales, I don't feel guilty because the readers paid more. Like now I feel like I don't want to run a sale on this for at least a year because people paid their $3. I don't want them to be like bitter, like, hey, what is 99 cents or free now? Forget it. All right, shall we hop into the listener questions? It looks like we did a little reshuffling because Andrea was a last minute dropout. So it looks like Joe, you gonna read the first one for us?
Yep. Okay, so first question is from Andy, who says, I love all your thoughts on reader magnets. If someone plans on writing 3 books and rapid releasing them, does it make sense to offer up the first entire book for free as a reader magnet to build newsletter pre-launch and to lead people into the second and third books?
So I think I no, I've actually never done this, but I have made a book free right away. I did this when I started my pen name. I made it perma-free on all the stores, but I was doing the rapid release and had book 2 and 3 come out right away. But as far as doing it for the reader magnet, I generally don't. I like doing a special novella or like a prequel, usually a novella, novelette at least, like maybe 20,000 words. So it's not as big of an investment of my time for something I'm just going to always give away free or free right off the bat. I don't necessarily want to spend as much time doing that as to write a whole novel. Generally, when I do like something becomes a perma-free book one for me, that's like years after it originally came out, long after I made back all the money on editing and made back what I consider, a fair investment of my time. Usually it's after the series is complete. It's something you can start doing once you don't have new releases showing up in the stores anymore. It's pretty easy for the series to start dropping off the radar pretty quickly. So that can be a good time to do the free book one. I mean, you could do it to draw in new people. Actually, I lied. I did this when I first started writing sci-fi under my name. I gave away book one for free to everybody on my fantasy newsletter list, which at the time was my only newsletter list. But I did start a separate sci-fi one after that. And I think I gave away about 1,000 copies to people. And it actually didn't hurt the launch of that book at all. And one thing that was nice with doing it that way, by just giving it away with BookFunnel, was that those people did not then need to go buy the book on Amazon. So I didn't have all my fantasy fans jumping over. We've talked a lot about on the show how when you jump genres, it can kind of mess up the also bots, and Amazon doesn't necessarily know how to recommend the book if a whole bunch of people who usually buy fantasy or suddenly picking up a sci-fi, you end up in the also your book ends up in the also bots for a lot of the other fantasy books, even though it's sci-fi, when what you want is to be in the also bots of a whole bunch of other space opera people or whatever. So, but if you start giving away book one right away, you're kind of in the hole already. You might have a weaker launch because people that might have bought it now have no need to. And you've presumably invested quite a bit of time and money in book one. Most people don't start off being able to write a book a week or even a book a month right off the bat. So I don't know. I would my take is to wait and make book one free later on, and then to write some other kind of exclusive, like the prequel novella, if you have one, or you can think up one, might be a good kind of thing that you could do exactly what you're talking about, kind of get them excited for the series ahead of time, without actually giving away the whole book one.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a huge proponent of free first in series, but I've never started with a book one that was free. I wait until two books are out. And since we're talking about, in my career, for most of my career, I was doing one book per genre per year. That meant that it was at least 2 years that book one was available at whatever price I'd priced it at, usually $3, well, $2.99, and then it would go free. So, I mean, I think that's probably still what I would do and still what I will do if I decide to do a perma-free for this epic fantasy, for example. But it's funny. We talk about reader magnets a lot, and I've almost always added mine long after the fact as a way to revitalize a series rather than to give it a strong launch. Like, we recommend reader magnets as being sort of the first thing you put out. But in my case, every time I've put one out, it was like after book 3 or book 4 of a series. And so, I guess that's a piece of, if you don't feel as though you can get your reader magnet out with the launch, which is recommended, there are other ways you can use it. And, it ends up being effective in a different way. It won't lead people into your first, well, it probably will lead people into your first book, but don't lead people into your first book when your book is a new release. So don't give up on them just because you can't get them out on the timeline that you're intending to.
I will say too, it's kind of hard to get people onto your mailing list until they've actually read your work. So that's why I'm a big fan of like putting the sign up at the end of book one and then giving them something that after they've read book one, they're really going to want, like the prequel novella that explains the backstory for this one character or whatever. It's not to say you can't do like the book funnel has bundle, I'll have, what do you call it? Promos, cross-author promos that you can sign up for and hope to get people on early. Same with a story bundle. We had those guys on last year. You can check them out too for finding people and doing that kind of thing. But it's just harder, and then you're automatically getting the kind of people that sign up to get free stuff and go out of their way to find free stuff to sign up for versus just throwing everything into your launch in the store for people who are willing to pay money for books and then getting them onto your list. That's kind of definitely the method I prefer. All right, next question is from J. Elizabeth. I would love to hear about any experience with going wide on audio. I'm about to publish book 3 in my fantasy series and have pretty much decided to use Voices Share Plus from Findaway Voices instead of ACX. That way my narrator gets a nice upfront payment and I don't have to worry about exclusivity. It's weird doing it mid-series, I know, but I figured I have 4 and 6 years to wait out the ACX exclusivity, and I don't want to add to that for the series by putting another one in that category. I guess I was wondering if Chirp deals are hard to get or worth it, if only the third and later fourth and maybe fifth audiobooks are wide. Thanks.
So I've never been exclusive with my audio. That was one of the decisions I made that I was rather pleased with later on. The two things I've produced via ACX, I didn't go the exclusive route. I've also never gone for a Chirp deal, so you'll probably hear more about that from Lindsay. But I do have some experience with changing direction with my audiobook series midstream, because books 1 through 3 of the Book of Deacon series are traditionally published through Tantor, and they didn't pick up book 4. So I self-published book 4. I got the same narrator, so if you are listening to the series, then book 4 feels like it was produced by the same folks, because everyone but everything but the logo on there is the same. And I can say that there is a sell-through drop between book 3 and book 4. mostly because, and I looked it up when I was answering this question, Audible gets very confused about what the name of a series is. Like they are all bunched together into the correct series. Actually, a little bit better than Amazon does. Like there's like fractional series numbers and stuff, but they the series name is different on four different, like for the four books in the series have three different names for some reason. Like sometimes it sticks the word series at the end. So Audible's metadata can be a little bit screwy in the best of times, and when you change courses in any way, shape, or form, you're probably going to exacerbate that. That said, the drop in read through, or I guess listen through in this case, between books 3 and book 4 might not be 100% because of the change in the way that the books are being released. Book 3 and book 4 have the lowest read through of any of the books in my Book of Deacon series, because the first 3 books come to a pretty good conclusion. There's no real sequel hook to get you to book 4. There was also a long delay between the books 3 and book 4. So not scientific to say that the audiobook listen through dropped because of the way I changed things, but it's a data point. And yeah, so it's worth doing things non-exclusive. I preferred non-exclusive, and if you can make the change, do it, but be prepared for things to be a little bit bumpy.
Yeah, that was one of my thoughts, is that it may have a hard time. Like you'll probably have to email ACX and they may be kind of like, well, you went to somebody else, so we don't really care about you anymore. Because I've had to email them before just because something was a little different with like book 7 and they didn't automatically put it in the series. So I had to request them to add it to the series, which they did. But again, I was going through ACX, so I'm not quite sure. I guess you'd have to email Findaway and hope they can get it added to your existing series, or just hope you get lucky. I mean, I think they use the metadata from Amazon for the most part. So in theory, they could automatically get it on there. So for Chirp deals, I think I've had 2 or 3 at this point, always on book 1s. I have not tried to get like a book 2 or book 3. I'm not sure they'll go for that. They might. It is getting a little more competitive. Like I've also been denied. Like the first year, I think I got them whenever I requested it, and like the last time I tried, they're like, nope. It was on a book that had been done before, so they may just be less excited about one like that. But I would guess that they're getting more people submitting now too. So my experience, and I think I've done them all the ones I've had at 99 cents, kind of dropping like a $9.99 audiobook to 99 cents, is that honestly, like it does pretty well. It definitely moves the needle on sales of that book 1. The sell through is kind of even though I don't price my audiobooks that expensively on Findaway where I can choose, I might do book 2s and 3s, or I think maybe $12.99 is kind of my standard, maybe $9.99. I'd have to take a peek, but there were some. I continue to sell later books in the series through Findaway, but it is yeah, like there's like a big drop off on like the number of reviews and sales. So I feel like the people who sign up for Chirp books again are kind of the people that they're willing to pay that 99 cents or maybe $2.99, but taking that jump up to $9.99 or higher for the next ones, maybe less likely. I feel like I'm do much better on ebooks when I make book 1 on my ebook 99 cents and the next one is $3.99 or $4.99. I've generally had a much better sell through, and I have good sell through on those series also on Audible, where people are just using a credit. I have a dog walking around, clacking around, stuck on the hardwood floor. There's always something. But yeah, so as comparable series on Audible where people are just buying the credits, pretty good sell through. So, but it hasn't, like, I like the Chirp deals. I appreciate them, but they haven't been game changers for me in any way. Like not the way a Bookbub on an ebook can be for a lot of people. Like a lot of people, that's kind of started their career in a lot of ways. So the other questions in there, I was curious if you're also switching narrators mid-series, or if you were just like your narrator works on ACX and also works through Findaway. Shouldn't be a big deal then, but I have a series where I had to switch narrators after 3, and there was definitely like a lot of what happened. Like people really get into the narrators, and I understand that as an audiobook listener myself. So listeners aren't crazy about that if you have to switch. So I would also say that if you do the voice, I actually want to read a bit about, because not everybody may know what Voices Share is. So I'm just going to read this from Findaway's site just to get everybody caught up. But so they basically say if you've already created an audiobook with Findaway Voices, you'll be familiar with the process and Voices Share. You get to pick, you get casting, you get to pick your narrator. When the production finishes, your audiobook gets to reach the entire listening world thanks to our 40 global audiobook sellers and library systems. So everything's the same, but you were going to be giving your, if your audiobook, the production is cheaper, which is what she was talking about. So like if your audiobook was going to cost $1,000, with Voices Shared, it only costs $500. The authors keep 60% of the royalties instead of 80, and 20% of the royalties go to the narrator. So this is definitely a little different than the ACX program. You are locked into selling through Findaway Voices at that point, which you're basically still exclusive. You're just exclusive to somebody else, and they're distributing you to a lot of stores. So but you're not going to be able to like sell your book on your website if that's something you ever want to do, because you have to sign the deal that says, because your narrator has to get that 20%. So it has to be fair for them. So just that's something to think about too. Also, Findaway says there's an application process where you have to provide your sales and marketing information. And so your narrator will have some information ahead of time because they want to know that the book's actually going to sell. So that's another question. And I don't know how your sales are, but if sales are weaker, pretty weak on the first books in the series, you might not even be able to get the deal or get a narrator. So that's just some stuff to think about, I guess that's all I have to say on that. I think that was all she asked. She had about 3 questions in there, right? Did I get it all, Joe?
Yeah, I believe you did. And I can also sort of yes and with the when you have to change narrators. My sci-fi series had to change narrator just because the narrator at my publisher left the publisher, so he wasn't in their stable anymore, and they switched to someone else. And it's the only emails I've gotten about the sci-fi audiobooks where, oh, I really like the other guy. What happened to him? So yeah, people get attached to narrators, and if you can stick with the same one, that's definitely a leg up, which is why I did so with book 4 of the Book of Deacon. All right, so next question is from Kay Vale. I'd love to hear about box sets. I'm getting book 6 of a 9-book series out, and I released the first 3 books in a box set to sort of crickets. When it gets a Kobo promotion, it sells, and it had a little Google Play success, but I'm wondering if I'm doing something wrong. Since the series will be about 9 books, I thought I'd do 3 3-book box sets. But since going wide, book 1 is free, book 2 is discounted to $2.99, and book 3 has the normal price of $4.99. So $7.98 if you buy all 3 normally. I put the box set price at $6.99. Here's what I'm thinking of trying, so you can tell me what I'm doing wrong. Mostly I want to know how you handle wide and KU box sets. Number 1, reduce the price to $5.99. Sure, that's just $1 more than book 3's price, but things are already pretty wonky with this first box set. Number 2, change to a 4 or 5 book box set and make the price $9.99. That way it's now a savings of about $3 over buying the 4 books, and I make more overall. I could even add a short story collection to the first box set, so it feels like 2 5-book box sets when the series is finished. And if I do this, do I update the old box set, or do I delist it and make a new entry? And option 3 is cry. What do you think? So what I think is, in your situation, I'd start with number 3 and get that out of the way. I usually cry when I find that I've made a bad decision. But also, I went the 3-book box set route early on. Well, it's still the case with all of my my series. I did a 3-book box set, and each book has a free book 1. So I have a similar situation where the price of my first box set would have to be pretty low compared to other box sets, because otherwise you're not really getting any value out of it. But in the case of the first 2 series, I did indeed include a bunch of short stories and novellas, some of which were actually exclusive to the box set. And that was a way to sort of justify less of a discount, or I should say, add more value to the book, to the box set at the time. If you're going to add books or you're going to add stories to a boxed set, I would recommend delisting and relaunching, especially if you don't feel as though the sales history of your box set is worth holding on to. If you do this, however, make sure to make it extremely clear when you relaunch that it is a relaunch of a box set, because some people might, if you have any fans at all, they might end up picking up this new book because it's a new book from you and discover that it's just the box set that they already owned most of. So make your language very clear for your launch of that. You don't want people to get confused, which is also, by the way, why you would want to, why I would recommend delisting and making a new one, because adding stuff to a book that's already out is just sort of not often done. And it's very difficult to sort of promote when you're just promoting an updated version of another book. So yeah, that's where I am on that subject.
I've actually got a box set that's exactly like this with pricing structure. Book one's a perma-free, book two's $2.99, book three's $3.99, $4.99, I think. So that's one where, yeah, it doesn't end up, I think $5.99 is kind of what the regular price is I have it at. So it's still a deal. But yeah, it's kind of a weird one. Like a lot of times if books are full price, I can do $9.99 for a 3-book box set and it's still a deal. But in that case, but that's okay. Like I find that one of the good things about having it higher priced is that you can perhaps attract a Bookbub deal more easily, because they love to like discount a higher price book down to 99 cents or free, just because it looks like a much better deal for them than like a $2.99 book down to 99 cents. But that is my first thought, or first thing, is that I would recommend just leaving the first box set at 3 books, especially if you're writing 9 books and you're kind of thinking, let's do 3 trilogy sets. That really divides up nicely, without having to add extra things to try to make it work at 4 books and 5 books. It just doesn't need to be $9.99 for that first one. For myself, I don't actually do box sets for later books in the series. There's nothing wrong with it. I know Andrea does that, and she's got like a set of, not only does she have the series page on Amazon, but she's got like the series of box sets on Amazon. So she ends up with 2 series pages, which can certainly be a good way to keep people reading on, people who like the box sets. But I kind of feel like after they've read 3, they're going to be fine with continuing to buy the books individually at full price. They're kind of in it at that point. Not that I have occasionally had people ask over the year, hey, is it going to be a discount? I'm like, no, you got the discount, the rest you got to pay for. But part of that is just lazy too. You got to like do more covers and stuff if you're going to continue to bundle it up. But you are losing a little bit of money because you're making it a deal for people. As far as pricing though, with box sets, I almost never promote the full price box set or even the regular price box set. So if it's $5.99 or $9.99, I just let it hang out there. Yeah, I get some sales, and I will occasionally, especially in Kindle, if the ones I have in KDP Select, so that they're in KU, I will sometimes have ads running to the box sets at $9.99, because I really don't need that many to convert in order to break even on those ads. And if I'm breaking even and then they go on and buy the rest of the series, you're making money. And then with page reads too, it can end up being actually more lucrative if you write fairly long books, if they're in a box set. But so I don't think it's surprising at all not to get a lot of sales though, just out of the blue on $5.99 box set or $9.99 box set. I almost always, everything is focused around running deals on those. So if it's in KDP Select, a countdown deal for 99 cents, I'll do those often. If it's an old box set and the series is complete, I will happily make the whole for 3 books free. You get the every quarter, right? You get 5, or I never remember if it's 5 days or 7 days. I feel like you get 7 with the free books. And run a few ads in conjunction with that to, it can be like with the free, with real free or cheap stuff, I usually try to get the sponsorship site stuff rather than running the ads, because if you're paying per click, it gets really expensive really quickly. So, but yeah, the rest of the time I pretty much ignore those bundles and just don't even worry about it. But yeah, Kobo is a good place where you can, they frequently have deals, and their free page has, or like the $10, whatever it costs to get an ad on. I think they even have bundle deals from time to time. So yeah, those are worth shooting for. But yeah, it can be tough to sell even bundles at $9.99 just out of the blue to a new reader. So run some sales on those suckers. All right, next question is from Rick. So I'm still confused over editing. I would love to hear about you guys' process. You draft, you revise, you send to your editor. What kind of edits are they doing, and what is your process to deal with them?
All right, so my writing process is I do a first draft and then I do a revision. So just read through and address any of the marks I've made for myself. Ideally, if time permits, which this year not so much, I do a beta reader pass where I send it off to beta readers and I get my feedback and then I'll address that. And then it goes to my editor. And my editor does what's called a line edit. The editor cleans up the grammar and stuff, obviously, but that's not a line edit. That's just called, I believe, a copy edit. The line edit is a little bit more in depth, ensure consistent tone and such. Proper nouns for the book are kept track of in a style sheet. My editor goes so far as to sort of catalog the idiosyncrasies and dialects of individual characters to make sure that that stays consistent. In any case, uh, the editor will correct the grammar stuff and syntax and stuff, make suggestions on different wordings for when a character is somehow not flowing the way they ought to. Even sometimes catching plot holes, they'll like comment that something is inconsistent with something that was stated earlier in the series or earlier in the book. But my editor does not make any changes. They're all, well, I mean, they do make changes, like track changes, and I have to apply them. But in terms of actual plot, that's not in my edit. That's what's called developmental editing. And I've only done developmental editing once. It's much more expensive, as it should be, because you're basically having someone help you write the book. And honestly, I just prefer, even if it's a new topic that I think I'm going to have trouble with, I would rather spend my time doing the research beforehand than having somebody sort of hold my hand during the writing process, just because I have a really hard time integrating other people's ideas into my writing that weren't, in my plan. So yeah, that's my process. My editors don't make any suggestions about plot or character.
For myself, I write the first draft, then I do one editing pass that is basically to both kind of tidy up sentences, but also fix or add anything that I decided to change, like as I was writing, because I just do the first draft with no going back. And so sometimes I make notes to myself, like when I'm doing my editing pass, I have to fix this or kind of add in this thing that's going to come into play later. And at that point, I send it off to my beta readers. And these guys let me know about kind of any big picture or character problems that they believe that I should work on. And whether or not I fix things or not, it kind of depends on if I agree. And that's going to be usually your relationship with any editor when it's come to the kind of developmental stuff. So these guys are kind of like my developmental editing pass. My first few books, I went through a workshop with, chapter by chapter with everyone. And I learned a lot, and I learned not to publish my first book out of that. So it's actually probably the second book I finished, but probably the fourth book I actually had started that I ended up publishing and becoming my first book. But after the beta readers have it, and then I tinker, so that I've addressed the things that I want to address, I send it off to my editor, and she does copy editing. She's occasionally, if something is confusing in a fight scene or something like that, she'll point things out like, hey, this is not real clear, you might need to tinker with that. But mostly she's just like fixing, my brain likes to randomly leave out words and sentences and things like that, so she does that. I've never paid for a developmental edit. I believe they're in the thousands of dollars, so it's something I usually suggest. Do the workshop, and it's such a learning process when you critique other people as well. Instead of just having your work critiqued, there's kind of a limit to how much you could learn with your work as the foundation versus experiencing, reading a lot of other people's and critiquing other people's work. And depending on the workshop, you may get to see comments that other people made on the work that you just critiqued, and you're like, oh yeah, that's totally valid, I didn't see that. Or you may disagree. And I just found it a really good part of not only learning story structure and plot and all those things, but kind of developing your voice and developing confidence in your own style. When you first join a workshop, you just you think everybody's right, and you try to get rid of all the adverbs. There's a lot of dumb advice that goes around in workshops too, but part of becoming confident in yourself and finding your voice is realizing what is right for you and what's not. And then having it's almost like having a thesis that you have to defend. You're like, well, okay, but I'm keeping these adverbs, but you got to know why. So I love workshops, always recommend them. Not to say it's not useful to pay for a developmental edit, but I feel like as indie authors, we're already paying for probably the copy edit, the cover art. It's very easy to run up to $2,000 pretty quick if you go high end on those things. If you buy formatting software, do you really want to add like another $3,000 on top of that when you don't know yet how much you're going to make from your first book? So that's my feelings on that stuff and my process. It looks like I gave myself the next question to ask too. Rick D asks, the last one was Rick W. Rick D asks, can you do a perma-free book 1 on Amazon if you're Amazon exclusive? And we had a similar question from Laxmi. Perma-free first in series for a series in KU. Any chance to delve into the positives/negatives of this in an episode? Go ahead, Joe.
All right. So as far as I know, you cannot do a perma-free book that is in KU. They give you free days, and you can use those, but you can't go permanently free on an Amazon exclusive book. I've never done a perma-free book 1 in a series where the rest was in KU, but I would say that the pros are the same as a perma-free in a wide series. It's a lower barrier to entry for new readers. More readers are going to, as a result, funnel through the rest of the series, and you'll be able to direct them to your newsletter and expose them to the rest of your catalog. The cons, I would say, are that wide folks who pick out your perma-free book 1 are going to be disappointed to find that they can't get the rest of the series. So you're going to disappoint the audience that you frankly aren't targeting. And you need to sort of weigh that into your consideration. And also having a book 1, I don't know for sure about this because of my lack of experience with KU in general, but if you have book 1 that's not in KU and the rest of it is in KU, there's probably going to be a little bit of a user interface difference. People who are KU readers might be a little confused and might miss out on book 1 just because of the difference in which the browsing might occur. I don't know for sure. But I would say that other than that, you're going to get all the benefits of a perma-free book 1.
Right. So you cannot make it perma-free and have it in KDP Select, but you can choose not to have book 1 in KDP Select and have the rest of the series in KDP Select. There's nothing against that. In which case, you're waiting for Amazon to price match book 1 to free, so it has to be free in other stores. I would say this is probably kind of a last ditch effort that you should try. Like if your series is now in KDP Select and you're basically not selling anything with book 1 at 99 cents and in KU, and you've tried promos, maybe you've tried tinkering with your blurb, you've already kind of fixed some stuff and you're just not getting any visibility. Maybe your ads are, if you're trying ads, are not working. Or a lot of times perma-free book 1 is something you might try to do if you don't want to spend a lot of money on ads. And it's possible that you can do this, but the problem is that the rest of your series being in KU, you're probably not going to get much out of that because they're not going to, KU subscribers get KU books recommended to them by Amazon's algorithms. It's sort of like, well, they just want to recommend the things that you now have access to and that you're going to enjoy. So they tend to do a mix of for sale books and KU books. I'm not a KU subscriber, and so I don't get necessarily recommended a whole bunch of KU books. I usually get trad published stuff recommended to me. Maybe that's more what I buy, but that's what they try to push on me. I hardly ever, I'm not sure I ever see Amazon, like stuff that floats up on my app, Kindle app. Here, you should try this free book. Like so if you do make something free, a perma-free book 1, you have to assume that you're going to have to do promotions for it. You may get people to just surfing the free list that will find it and check it out, but it should be done kind of in conjunction with, running some promos on some of the sponsorship sites. And there are quite a few relatively inexpensive ones that can get you some downloads of a free book. But because that book 1 is not going to be recommended to people in KU, the people who find your book 1, probably not the KU subscribers. So they're going to be buyers of the next books in your series, hopefully, if they liked book 1. But that begs the question, like, is it even worth being in KU with the rest of the series? Because it's possible somebody will see that book 2 is in KU because it's doing well after you run a promo or something, and then they'll go check out book 1, and they can certainly grab a free book. That's no big deal. Lots of people are in KU, buy books, and I'm sure some of them grab free books too. But as far as organically finding it, that's probably not going to happen. So, and because when you are in KDP Select, you do have the option to get the 7 free days a quarter. You can just use those. Like perma-free, I definitely I continue to get downloads throughout the month, throughout the quarter on books that are perma-free, but not to a huge extent with most books. Like I have the one box set that does really well, gets a lot of downloads all the time. But for the most part, you're going to be doing the promos of your free Perma-free book, and you're going to find that most of your downloads come during the period you have the promos anyway. So you could just as well have just use the KDP Select free days. So I guess final answer is yes, you can do it. Probably you would just want to be all wide with the entire series, because that's kind of who you're targeting as far as buyers of book one, or be all in with KDP Select and KU so that people do get that book one recommended to them.
All right, next question is from Michelle. There was some recent drama among a couple of romance authors showing a case of one author plagiarizing another author. In the time you all have been published, have you had some personal experience with or have been aware of legitimate plagiarizing, and what should new authors be aware of in this regard? And I will say that I had somebody plagiarize the first 5 books of the Book of Deacon in their entirety. Well, in a weird way, too, where they technically wasn't word for word, but it was rewritten. Like they took each sentence and rewrote it. It was very strange. I only found out about it because a fan who was looking for books similar to mine found books very similar to mine and let me know about it. So I guess a few things that you should be aware of from that experience. Unless they are also masquerading as you, it's going to be pretty difficult to even be aware that someone's plagiarizing your stuff. It's just not the sort of thing I'm sure the back end is pretty well capable of discovering that stuff, but that's not accessible to you. So there's nothing you're going to be doing in order to see if somebody is plagiarizing your stuff, particularly because unless they are being extremely naive, they're going to change some aspect of the book. Usually the names of the main characters or really any proper noun will be changed when they do a plagiarism. So the stuff that makes it easiest to identify your book won't be the same. So don't bother trying to find plagiarism of your stuff. It's not within your power for the most part. If you discover that someone is plagiarizing your stuff and you released your book first, and we must assume that's the case, otherwise the question is how do they get their hands on your book? You can issue a copyright takedown on most services. Most services will provide you that capability just with a form. In my experience, that might not even be necessary. When my books were plagiarized, I reached out to the person who was responsible. It turned out he had a Facebook page, and he was eager to take the books down rather than face any sort of copyright or legal trouble. People tend not to fight too hard when they've been caught. It's very hard to claim that you weren't plagiarizing if it's, again, legitimate plagiarism, like they actually took your stuff. It's usually pretty open and shut and will be found in favor of the person who released the book originally. So nobody wants the copyright strike. Nobody wants to have to deal with any sort of legal stuff. So they're usually pretty quick to comply. And chances are pretty good plagiarism won't be costing you much. Like plagiarists usually don't make a gigantic amount of money off of their plagiarism. There are notable examples where that was not the case. But generally speaking, if these people were really savvy marketers, they would probably be making successful books on their own. They wouldn't need to take somebody else's stuff. So I treat plagiarism in this way, similar to the way I treat piracy, which is to say I don't look for pirates and I don't usually do anything when I find pirates. It's such a small impact on my sales that I don't think about it too much. It stinks when it happens, but plagiarism isn't something that weighs too much in my mind, even knowing that it had happened with the majority of one of my series. I can tell you that series, I had over 1,000 reviews on book one, and the plagiarist had 9 reviews on book one. So I don't think they were making a pretty big impact on my sales.
Yeah, yours was weird. That was like not even a year ago, right? That was pretty
Yeah,
recently.
that was recent.
And I remember looking, and it's like they rewrote the whole books and just kind of like, you know how you random, there's like art, what do they call it? Content spinners or something, where they take an article on the internet and just like run it through software and slightly change the sentences. I was like, is that what this guy did? Why? I hope it's what he did, because otherwise it's like, why would you spend so much time hand copying but slightly changing entire novels? Just write your own novel. In my case, they usually just deal it all out right. Like I've, everything from my audiobooks pop up on YouTube constantly, especially now that I have stuff of my own up on there. So usually somebody tells me YouTube's really fast about filing. If you file a takedown notice, and like your name is the name of your name on your email address and domain name or the name of the author, they don't seem to look too closely and just like, okay, take them down. I've had other incidents, man, there with stuff that's in KDP Select that has shown up, here it is supposed to be exclusive with Amazon, and oh, the book is for sale on Apple under some other publisher's name. That's a pain because Amazon usually sends you a nasty bot and like, hey, you need to take this book down. You're like, well, I didn't put it there. That's when it can be really helpful to have a rep, or like the distributors are good. Like Dan Wood at Drafted Digital, Drafted Digital helped me out even before I had any books on Drafted Digital. So I've always appreciated them for that. Helped me get some stuff taken down from Apple that went up there. What else have I had done? Oh, just this last year for me, somebody claimed one of my audiobooks on ACX, where the audiobook that I put together is a 3-book box set. So that's why there's no, like, because you can go into ACX and you can just claim anybody's book. It's like they don't even look apparently. So you just like type in Lindsay Broker, Book One, Dragon Blood. So somebody made an audiobook of the book, and I didn't listen to, and it was like a 9-hour audio, or maybe it was like a 7-hour audiobook that it would have been a 9-hour audiobook. So not only did they take my book, create a whole production and publish the audiobook through ACX, but they did a crummy job of it. Like it was, though the cover was horrible. I was embarrassed. Like, don't put my name on that. That's horrible. And then whatever they did, they didn't even read the whole story because it was not long enough to account for that. So I was like, oh my gosh, that sucks. People are going to actually buy that on accident. So fortunately, that series is with Podium Publishing. So I emailed them, but even going through them, it took a couple of days before ACX took it down and acted. And I was just like horrified, like, I hope nobody buys this. But it's one of those things where you could tell it actually had a sales ranking. So I was like, oh God, somebody bought this. So that is one of the risks if you do box sets, is that your individual titles are available to be claimed on the stores. Or if you just haven't done audiobooks, you might check. Like if you sell pretty well in ebooks, go check on, make sure, and you haven't done audiobooks, make sure somebody else hasn't. So that stuff just seems to be pretty rampant. But as far as outright plagiarism, I don't know, like I don't have a story like Joe's where somebody that I know of has like copied the whole book and put it up for sale, and as far when it's just like somebody copied your idea or like it's really similar, I have had a couple of times where fans are like, this book is a lot like your Emperor's Edge series, like, yeah, it is just people do that. It happens. I've certainly been inspired by other authors. I've certainly, never written anything to the extent that it's similar to anybody's going to be accusing me of plagiarism, but just take, in some cases like that, you can just take it as a compliment, be like, yeah, they were inspired by my story and wrote something similar because they wanted to do their own version. Different from now if it is like Joe's case where obviously it's the same story and they just changed words and sentences a little bit, that's a different thing and probably worth pursuing if you can get it, like Joe said, if you can get it taken down without hiring a lawyer, that would be ideal. At the point where if they're not going to do it, if you don't get a lawyer involved, then you kind of have to decide, is it worth it? Are the other person's books selling? If they're making a ton of money off of something that they plagiarized from you, that might be worth it if you can try to get the money back. But yeah, in most cases, I just would say be flattered, as much as it's possible. I know it kind of every time somebody's like, somebody put your book on YouTube again. I'm like, stop doing that. It wastes my time having to go file a takedown notice. But since I do make money from the ads on YouTube, I don't want somebody else making my money. And sometimes they're not even books that are allowed to be up there because they're exclusive with Audible or a publisher has the rights to them. So in that case, I will pursue it. All right, I think we might have time. Let's just do one more. We're coming up on the hour and my old dog is hot tonight. She's just wandering around the house like, why is it summer coming? Why is it? It's only like 69 because I have the AC on for her, but you know how it is when you get old. It's tough. All right, Lena asks, I may have missed an episode on your show on how to gain newsletter subscribers, but I've listened to several other people and I'm still not clear on how to garner interest. I have 10 published books and I've been really lax on doing this.
I have not been the most proactive newsletter builder, and it shows. In a recent episode, we talked about what our newsletter size was, and mine was about half as big as the next largest on the show. But I have built, thousands of people onto my newsletter list, and here's how I did it. I make sure the newsletter link is prominent on my social media. I don't use, well, yeah, I make sure my newsletter link is prominent wherever I'm going to be doing anything. If I have the capacity to direct somebody toward either my newsletter or my website where you can sign up for my newsletter, I do that. My newsletter link, therefore, is very prominent on my book, my author site. It is what they say above the fold. I also make sure that my newsletter link is in all of my back matter. It's usually my call to action. Even when I have more books in the series for people to read through to, I generally assume that they'll find those even without clicking on a link. So usually the only active link in my my back matter is my newsletter link. Even if you do want people to click through to your next book and you choose to make that your call to action, I would still at least mention it in your back matter, and I would make it the active link in any book that doesn't have a natural read through to the next thing, like the last in the series, or if it's a standalone, I would make my newsletter link the only thing in the back matter you can click on. Free first in series and reader magnets are, of course, fantastic ways to get people to sign up for your newsletter. Even if somebody picked up your free book because it was free, if you, and this is the next thing, if you make a perk for signing up for your newsletter and you make it clear in their, when somebody sees the opportunity to sign up for your newsletter, you'll be getting a free novella or a free novel or a free short story or a free collection of short stories. That's somebody who is a free seeker will probably still sign up for your newsletter if they know they're going to be getting another free thing for it. And once they're on your newsletter, every letter you send is an opportunity for them to maybe give another of your books a try. And with a newsletter perk, for many years I would do a new one about every 6 months because I tend to write a lot of short stories. It's sort of how I cool off after a novel. These days I have stuck with the same newsletter perk, but because I have the Patreon now, I tend to continue accumulating short stories. The new newsletter perk is a collected edition of all of the in-series short stories I've written. So swapping out new perks periodically gives you something to talk about when people might want to sign up, and in general is just another way to make sure that your newsletter is appealing.
Yes, and I will just add that, you know, to, it doesn't matter so much how many books you have published, is kind of how many you've sold and how many people have read them. Like the more people, more fans you have, the easier it's going to be to get people onto your newsletter. So that's a thing to consider too. It's kind of like reviews. People ask like, well, how do you get like hundreds of reviews? It's like, well, you get like tens of thousands of people to read the book, and then the reviews kind of come. So, but yeah, the things Joe said that you can do is that just at the back of the book have an offer, sign up for my newsletter and get free prequel, like we were talking about. Something exclusive works best, because if people can just buy it for 99 cents at the store, they're like, I'm not going to sign up for a newsletter, and then have a link on your site and maybe have your bonuses listed. One of the things I do for my fantasy newsletter is that if people come in through my website, they're not necessarily coming from the back of the book because they wanted X bonus. I've got a series bundle of book ones of my fantasy. It's great to get to the point when you have enough books out that you can have 4 book ones of different series, and I give those away. And that's one of those things that kind of just over time continues to get people into the backlist stuff. Like maybe they come into the newsletter from a new series that I have out and they came for that particular bonus, but they got the other one too. And they're like, oh, I have all these 4 book ones I can try. And so I'll definitely see a lot of like people go on to buy, like when I have a new series going on that's doing well, I'll also get more people reading the older stuff because they're getting that bonus and they're getting to try those books for free. So yeah, basically just having something, a reason for people to give you their email address, because people can be hesitant about that. They don't necessarily want to get emailed. Other people are like excited about it. They want to hear from their favorite author and they never care, but you can kind of get the on the fence people with a bonus. But again, unless you're going to go out and kind of do the newsletter swaps and do promos and things like that with other authors to try to get people that aren't familiar with you onto a newsletter, which you can, that's valid. That's a valid way to build a newsletter. You usually have to put more work into the newsletter to turn those people into buyers. But for most part, it's kind of like your newsletter grows the more books that you sell. So that's something to consider too. All right, Joe, any parting thoughts? We'll wrap it up for tonight.
Nope, I think I'm fresh out of wisdom.
All right, me too. Thank you for listening, everyone. And thank you to Joshua Pearson for producing the show. You can find the show notes. We'll leave a comment or question at sixfigureauthors.com with the number 6. And Joe's got a blog post about his plagiarism story that he's going to give me the link to, and I can put that in the show notes if you're curious about that. All right, thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
So long, everybody.